Chapter 1: The Blue Hour and the Deep. Have you ever stood by the ocean at twilight, when the horizon vanishes and the sky bleeds into the sea? In that quiet space, the world we think we know begins to blur. For as long as humanity has built ships and dared to leave the safety of the shore, we have brought back stories, not just of storms, or uncharted islands, or the crushing dark of the abyss, but of them. We call them mermaids, sirens, the dwellers of the deep. To the modern mind, they are the stuff of fairy tales, a comforting myth to sell to children or display on movie screens. But if you strip away the bright colors of modern folklore, you are left with something much older, something deeply unsettling. Every ancient culture, separated by vast oceans and centuries of silence, spoke of the exact same entity, a creature, part human, part fish, possessing a voice that could bend the human will. Consider the sheer scale of our planet. The ocean covers over 70% of the Earth's surface, holding approximately 1.3 billion cubic kilometers of water. More than 80% of this liquid realm remains completely unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored by human eyes. We possess better maps of the cratered deserts of Mars and the dead plains of the Moon than we do of our own ocean floor. We live on a thin, fragile crust of dry land, surrounded by a massive, three-dimensional liquid empire that plunges down nearly 11,000 meters into the freezing dark. Why does this specific half-human image haunt our collective memory with such persistence? Is it merely a trick of the light, a lonely sailor's hallucination born of scurvy, isolation, and starlight? Or is it possible that the depths of our oceans hold a physical truth we are simply too afraid to look for? When we look at the global distribution of these myths, we find them in the ice-locked sagas of the Norse, the humid river lore of the Amazon, the ancient texts of the Mediterranean, and the sacred oral histories of Pacific Islanders who never saw a European ship until the 18th century. Tonight, we leave the brightly lit shores of certainty behind. Let the water carry you. Let your mind drift. Let us listen to the whispers of the deep. Chapter 2: The Echoes of Oannes. To find the origin of the whisper, we must travel back thousands of years, to the dry sands of ancient Mesopotamia, the very cradle of human civilization between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Long before the Greeks sang of sirens, there was Oannes. The Babylonian priest and historian Berossus, writing in the 3rd century before Common Era, compiled the fragments of this history from cuneiform tablets that were already ancient in his time. The Babylonians carved the likeness of Oannes into stone reliefs and cylinder seals, a being with the body of a fish, but beneath that aquatic form, the unmistakable features of a man, including a human head under the fish's head and human feet emerging from the tail. The ancient texts do not describe Oannes as a monster, a divine god, or a simple animal. They describe him as an instructor, a biological entity with an advanced intellect. The chronicles state that he would emerge from the Persian Gulf by day, sitting among humanity to teach them written language, mathematics, sciences, architecture, laws, and the arts of agriculture. And when the sun dipped below the horizon, Oannes would dive back into the dark waves, returning to his hidden home in the absolute abyss. He took no food from mankind, remaining entirely alien yet profoundly tied to our structural development. It is a strange foundation for a myth, isn't it? Our oldest records do not view the ocean dweller as a feral beast to be feared, but as an advanced intelligence, a keeper of secrets who came from the water to civilize mankind, only to vanish back into the pressure and the dark. Similar figures appear across the ancient world with disturbing consistency. In China, the Shanhaijing, or the Classic of Mountains and Seas, compiled over 2,000 years ago, details the Di Ren, a race of webbed, fish-bodied people who lived in the northern seas, possessed deep linguistic wisdom, and could manipulate the weather. Even in ancient Rome, the natural philosopher Pliny the Elder, writing in his encyclopedic Naturalis Historia in the 1st century of the Common Era, dedicated entire chapters to encounters with what he called Nereids and Tritons. Pliny was not a mythologist. He was a Roman administrator and military commander who gathered reports from provincial governors. He recorded that the governors of Gaul had written official letters to the Emperor Augustus stating that numerous Dead Sea humans had been found washed ashore on the Atlantic coast after heavy autumn storms. If these stories were mere fabrications, why did civilizations thousands of miles apart, with no physical means of communication, credit their structural knowledge and foundational biology to creatures emerging from the surf? Perhaps the waters have always been watching us, waiting for the right moment to rise. Chapter 3. The Logbooks of the Explorers. Move forward in time. Leave the ancient sands for the salt-stained wooden decks of the Age of Discovery. This was a time of cold, hard mathematics, trade routes, and practical survival. The captains who mapped our world were not poets or dreamers. They were cartographers, military officers, and pragmatists whose livelihood depended on absolute accuracy. Yet, their official logbooks, preserved in national archives from Madrid to London, contain entries that modern history books prefer to completely ignore. Consider Christopher Columbus. On January 9, 1493, near the coast of Rio de Oro in the Dominican Republic, he noted down 3 distinct figures rising high from the water in his official ship's journal. He wrote explicitly that they were not as beautiful as the legends claimed, possessing distinctly human-like, weathered facial features. He was expecting a European myth, but he recorded a physical encounter, noting their movements and physical presence with the same clinical, detached language he used for mapping dangerous coral reefs and calculating wind speeds. Years later, the disciplined English explorer Henry Hudson sailed the freezing, unforgiving waters near Russia in search of the Northeast Passage. On a quiet June evening in 1608, 2 of his crewmen, Thomas Hills and Robert Rayner, shouted out to the deck, They watched a creature swim close to the hull of the ship, looking earnestly up at them through the clear water. Hudson recorded the event in detail in his personal log. From the belly up, her skin was white, with long, dark hair flowing behind her. As she dove beneath the waves to avoid the ship's rudder, they saw a massive tail like that of a porpoise, speckled like a mackerel. These were seasoned mariners who spent their entire lives on the ocean. They knew every whale, seal, walrus, and manatee in the Atlantic. Yet, they wrote it down under oath in the vessel's official log. They saw something else. Something that looked back at them with clear recognition. Even the legendary pirate and mercenary Captain John Smith, before his famous involvement in Jamestown, recorded a detailed encounter in 1614 off the coast of New England, near the West Indies. He described seeing a woman swimming near the surface, possessing large, intelligent eyes, a finely shaped nose, well-formed ears, and long green hair, noting that below the waist, the creature gave way to the powerful tail of a fish. Smith was a hardened military veteran, a man not given to flights of fancy or poetic exaggeration. Furthermore, in 1625, the Portuguese missionary father Geronimo Lobo recorded encounters in the Red Sea with creatures known locally as peixe-mula, or woman fish, describing their anatomy under dissection as possessing human-like internal organs, a distinct rib structure, and a liver identical to a human's, wrapped in a thick layer of blubber. What did these men actually see when the fog rolled in? Why did they risk their professional reputations to write these details into official documents? Chapter 4: The Language of the Abyss. If you have ever submerged your head beneath the surface of the sea, you know that the ocean is not a silent void. It is a vast chamber of echoes. Whales sing across thousands of miles using low-frequency channels that utilize the unique physics of water pressure. Dolphins click, snap, and whistle in complex, mathematical patterns, even using signature whistles that function exactly like individual names within their pods. We are only just beginning to understand that the ocean speaks. In the late 20th century, specifically in the month of May 1997, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, captured an acoustic anomaly that shook the marine biology community. Military hydrophones, an array known as the Equatorial Pacific Ocean Autonomous Hydrophone Array, originally designed during the height of the Cold War to track Soviet nuclear submarines at the bottom of the ocean, picked up an ultra-low frequency sound in the remote South Pacific, near 50 degrees south and 100 degrees west. The scientific community officially named it the bloop. The sound was incredibly loud, far louder than any known marine mammal on Earth, including the blue whale, which had previously held the record for the loudest biological sound. It was detected by multiple sensors placed thousands of miles apart. It possessed a unique, organic, shifting frequency that showed rapid variations in tone, indicating a complex throat structure. While official reports years later eventually attributed the sound to the fracturing and scraping of massive icebergs carving off Antarctica, a lingering question remained among certain oceanographers. The acoustic signature had a strange, mathematical rhythm. It felt like a voice. It possessed characteristics of a language, a structured transmission rather than the random friction of ice against rock. What if there is an ancient language being spoken beneath the thermocline, a dialect developed over millennia by beings who survived the catastrophic climate shifts of the ice ages by retreating further into the warmth of the Earth's crust? We listen to the sky with massive radio telescopes for alien signals from distant galaxies, yet we completely ignore the structured broadcast coming from our own depths. There are regions in the ocean where sound travels indefinitely without losing its energy, known as the SOFO channel, or the sound fixing and ranging channel. At a depth of roughly 700 to 1,000 meters, the temperature and pressure create an acoustic highway. Anyone living down there would have a global communication network already built into their natural environment, allowing them to whisper across hemispheres in seconds. Chapter 5. The Aquatic Ape. Let us entertain a scientific thought that mainstream biology keeps at arm's length, buried under academic consensus. Why are humans so profoundly different from our primate cousins? If you look at chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans, they are perfectly adapted for tropical forests, climbing trees, or roaming the open savannas. Humans, however, possess a suite of physiological and anatomical traits that are completely unique among primates, but incredibly common among marine mammals. This is the foundation of the aquatic ape hypothesis, originally proposed by the German biologist Max Wessenhofer in 1940, and later expanded by the distinguished British marine biologist Sir Alister Hardy and the evolutionary writer Elaine Morgan. They pointed out that humans completely lack thick body fur. Instead, we possess a layer of subcutaneous fat bonded directly to our skin, an anatomical feature found in no other primate, but ubiquitous among seals, walruses, whales, and dolphins to prevent hypothermia. We are the only primates that breathe voluntarily, allowing us to control our respiration to swim under the surface, a trait essential for speech that terrestrial animals do not possess. Human infants instinctively hold their breath, open their eyes, and swim when submerged in water, demonstrating a natural diving reflex that immediately slows the heart rate and redirects blood to the brain, a physiological trait known as the mammalian dive reflex. Furthermore, our tears and sweat contain incredibly high concentrations of salt, an evolutionary mechanism for regulating salinity that is entirely redundant for a creature meant solely for the dry African savanna. Our bipedal posture, which leaves our spine aligned in a straight line, is highly inefficient for running compared to quadrupeds, but it is the perfect aerodynamic shape for swimming and diving through water resistance. The hypothesis suggests that at some point in our evolutionary past, between 4 and 7 million years ago, during a period of intense continental flooding, a branch of our hominid ancestors did not move out into the open grasslands. They moved into the salt marshes, the mangrove swamps, the coastlines, and eventually, the shallow seas. If one branch of humanity adapted to the land, developed tools of flint and iron, and built cities of stone, is it entirely impossible that another branch adapted completely to the water? If they did, they would not look like the pristine, delicate maidens of romantic folklore. They would be apex predators of the deep. Their skin would be tough, pale, or translucent to withstand the immense pressure and the biting cold. Their eyes would be large and highly developed, possessing a tapetum lucidum to absorb the faintest trace of bioluminescence in the midnight zone. They would be our evolutionary cousins, looking up at our iron holes from the dark, wondering why we ever chose the dry, burning land. Chapter 6. The Secrecy of the Coastlines. There are places on this planet where civilians are strictly, legally forbidden to go under penalty of military imprisonment. Vast stretches of coastline managed by navies, deep-sea trenches designated as restricted military testing zones, and underwater sonar arrays that monitor every vibration in the Earth's crust. The oceans are militarized to a degree the average citizen rarely contemplates. Consider the classified incidents of the Cold War. In the 1960s and 70s, both the United States Navy and the Soviet Navy began documenting what they officially termed USOs, unidentified submerged objects. Unlike UFOs in the sky, these objects were tracked via advanced sonar networks like the American SOSUS array, moving underwater at impossible speeds, sometimes exceeding 150 to 200 knots. This is a velocity that should physically destroy any traditional metal hull due to the immense friction and cavitation of water resistance. Furthermore, dark rumors began to circulate from naval divers involved in deep-sea salvage operations, such as the recovery of sunken nuclear warheads or lost submarines like the USS Thresher or the Soviet K-129. In 1982, during military training exercises in Lake Baikal, the deepest freshwater lake on Earth, Soviet military divers reported encountering humanoid swimmers at a depth of 50 meters. These entities were described as nearly 3 meters tall, wearing tight-fitting silvery suits but no visible breathing apparatus, swimming with incredible speed in the freezing water. When the military tried to capture one with a net, an acoustic backlash reportedly threw the entire diving team to the surface, causing severe decompression sickness. When these incidents occur, the records are immediately classified under the highest levels of national security. The public is told of top-secret experimental submarine technology, supercavitating torpedoes, or sonar anomalies caused by shifting thermal layers in the water currents. But the men who wear the heavy commercial suits, the saturation divers who live for weeks at a time in pressurized chambers on the ocean floor to service oil rigs, tell a different story in quiet bars near the international docks. They speak of shadows that mimic their movements just outside the circle of their halogen floodlights. Shadows that possess articulated hands, webbed fingers, and a terrifying, cold curiosity. The governments of the world may not be hiding secrets from the stars. They might simply be hiding the true owners of the ocean floor, protecting a fragile, undeclared peace with an aquatic civilization that was here long before our first primitive cities were built. Chapter 7. The Siren Song. The most enduring trait of the creature across all global folklore, spanning thousands of miles and different eras, is its voice. The Greeks warned that the song of the siren would cause a sailor to lose his mind, steering his vessel directly into the jagged rocks just to be closer to the source of the sound. In Homer's Odyssey, the hero Odysseus had to plug his men's ears with thick beeswax and tie himself tightly to the ship's mast just to survive the experience of hearing them. But what if the song is not a beautiful, operatic melody at all? What if it is a highly evolved biological weapon? We know through modern acoustic physics that certain frequencies of sound can cause severe hallucinations, intense nausea, hyperventilation, temporary blindness, and a feeling of overwhelming, existential dread in the human body. This is known as infrasound, sound waves that fall below the 20 Hz threshold of human hearing but still physically vibrate our internal organs, our lungs, and the fluid inside our inner ears. Some terrestrial predators, like tigers and African lions, use low-frequency roars that fall into the infrasound spectrum to momentarily paralyze the central nervous systems of their prey before striking. In the water, sound travels 4 times faster than it does through the air, and it carries vastly more kinetic energy because water is nearly 800 times denser than air. Imagine an apex predator in the dark water that can project a targeted acoustic frequency, a localized beam of infrasound, directly through the wooden or metal hull of a ship. To the sailors resting inside, the resonance would vibrate directly through their skeletal structure, bypassing the outer ears entirely. The human brain, struggling to interpret this intense, artificial neurological disruption, would translate the vibration into a phantom sound, a beautiful, haunting lament, a chorus of voices, or a familiar loved one calling their name from the water. It would disorient them, shatter their executive function, draw them to the edge of the deck in a waking trance, and compel them to slip quietly into the dark water. It is not magic. It is perfect, terrifying biology. A predatory call disguised as a lullaby. refined over millions of years of hunting human mariners who dared to enter their feeding grounds. Chapter 8. The Folklore of the Lonely Places. Every culture has a different name for them, but the core behavior, migratory patterns, and physical descriptions remain startlingly constant across human history. In the cold, mist-heavy islands of Scotland, Orkney, and Ireland, they speak of the Selkies, creatures that could shed their sleek seal skins to walk on land, always retaining a profound, melancholy longing for the sea, to which they would inevitably return if their skins were found. Across the Atlantic, in the folklore of West, Central, and South Africa, there is Mamiwada, a water deity of immense power and complex duality whose worship dates back to antiquity. She is depicted as a beautiful woman holding a massive serpent, bringing both immense financial fortune to those she favors and sudden, watery disaster, drowning those who disrespect her sacred river and coastal domains. In Japan, the legend takes a much darker, less romantic form. The Ninjo, mentioned in the Nihon Shoki, the Chronicles of Japan written in the year 720, is described as an ancient, grotesque fish creature with a human face, sharp teeth, and the voice of a delicate flute. To catch one brought terrible storms, earthquakes, and curses to entire coastal villages. Their flesh was said to grant eternal youth and longevity to anyone who consumed it, but historical tales describe this immortality as a bitter, living nightmare, a genetic transformation that left the consumer disconnected from the natural human cycle of life and death. Why do these stories persist across cultures that had absolutely no geographic, economic, or historical contact with one another? If you look at the global map, these stories flourish with the greatest intensity in the loneliest, most hostile environments. Isolated North Atlantic islands, foggy Scandinavian fjords, jagged Pacific coastlines where the wind never stops blowing. In the Isle of Man, laws regarding the protection of sea humans were discussed in local councils as late as the 19th century. It is as if, when human civilization thins out and our artificial noises fade away, the true nature of the world creeps closer to the surface. These myths are not inventions of bored minds. They are ethnographic warnings left behind by those who lived on the knife edge of the wild, recording what they witnessed when the fog rolled in and the ocean revealed its true face. Chapter 9. The Abyss Gazes Back. As our technology advances into the 21st century, we send increasingly complex, titanium-reinforced unmanned rovers into the deepest trenches on Earth, such as the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench, nearly 11,000 meters down. At that terrifying depth, the hydrostatic pressure is over 1,000 times greater than at sea level, equivalent to having an entire fleet of commercial airplanes standing on your thumb. It is a world of absolute, unyielding darkness, where the temperature hovers just above freezing, and the light of the sun has not penetrated for billions of years. Yet, every single time we send a camera down, we find life. Marine biologists discover hundreds of new species with every single deep-sea expedition. We find creatures that seem entirely alien to our traditional understanding of biology: transparent jellies that glow with internal neon light, fish with teeth like fragile glass, and massive colonies of tube worms that thrive on toxic chemicals pouring from hydrothermal vents, completely independent of sunlight, oxygen, or photosynthesis. Life finds a way to exist, adapt, and eventually dominate the most hostile environments imaginable on this planet. To state definitively that an intelligent, aquatic hominid cannot exist in the vast expanses of the ocean is not a scientific viewpoint. It is historical, biological, and intellectual arrogance. We assume we are the only advanced minds on this planet simply because we dominate the land, burn fossil fuels, and build square structures out of stone, concrete, and steel. But the ocean has no need for roads, cities, electricity, or fire. It is an empire of 3 dimensions, stretching down into miles of uncharted trenches and massive underwater cave networks that twist deep into the Earth's mantle, safe from surface cataclysms like asteroid impacts or ice ages. If an intelligent species evolved down there, they would have no use for our technology. Their tools would be acoustic, biological, and fluid. They would possess the quiet grandeur of the deep, living in perfect equilibrium with an environment that would instantly destroy us. They have all the time in the world, watching our surface civilizations rise, wage wars, and fall like transient foam on the breaking waves. Chapter 10. The Return of the Tide. The night is deep now, and the water is still. The ancient stone records of Mesopotamia, the precise ship logbooks of the early explorers, the strange acoustic anomalies picked up by military sonar networks, and the biological reality of our own evolutionary anomalies begin to weave together into a single, undeniable, breathtaking pattern. We are not alone on this blue planet. We never have been. We are merely the temporary residents of the dry shores, looking out at a vast, intelligent world that we barely comprehend. The legends of the merfolk are not dead relics of a superstitious past. They have simply retreated away from our bright satellite lights, our massive container ships, our oil drills, and our noisy underwater sonar engines. They have gone down into the absolute silence, into the protected trenches where human arrogance and pollution cannot easily follow. Consider the historical case of the town of Muiden in the Netherlands, where in 1403, after a catastrophic storm broke the sea dikes, a sea woman was found trapped in the mud of the flooded meadows. The historical records state she was brought to Haarlem, clothed, taught to spin yarn, and lived for 15 years among the citizens, always attempting to escape back to the sea, showing no interest in human speech but maintaining a quiet, melancholic dignity. She was buried in a traditional churchyard, a human soul recognized in a non-human body. Listen closely to the rhythm of the waves breaking against the shore tonight. It is the steady, ancient breathing of the world, a slow pulse that has remained completely unchanged for billions of years before we arrived. And perhaps, just beneath the dark surface, where the starlight cannot reach and the pressure begins to build, someone is looking up through the water, listening to the faint echo of our thoughts. Close your eyes. Let the heavy tide wash away the doubts, the noise, the responsibilities, and the exhaustion of the day. You are safe on the shore for now. Your journey for tonight is over. Sleep, let your mind drift into the deep, and let the ocean keep its beautiful, terrifying, eternal secrets.